Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, Be Joint Smart Part 3. My name is Corinne Pettit, and I'll be your moderator for tonight's presentation. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so that you know how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. This means that if you can hear music through your computer, you should be able to hear the presentation. If you prefer to join over the telephone, just select Use Telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will collect these and address as many as possible at the end. And before I introduce today's speaker, I'd like to take a moment to tell those of you who may be new to the Foundation about who we are, our mission, and what we do. In 2014, the National Psoriasis Foundation developed a new strategic plan which drives everything we do as an organization. To achieve our mission, the following goals were identified. Number 1, accelerate discovery to cure psoriatic disease. Number 2, improve health outcomes. And number 3, achieve goals to help our mission, whether it's being involved with an event or becoming a volunteer. By attending today's program, you've already taken a step towards expanding your knowledge about psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis to help manage your disease and to find others who understand what it means to live with psoriatic disease. You can help accelerate efforts towards a cure and greater understanding of psoriatic disease by participating in the NPF Corona National Psoriasis Patient Registry, which is the largest independent observational registry of psoriasis patients in the U.S. The registry, which involves a network of dermatology clinics, collects and studies patient health information, allowing researchers to compare the safety and efficacy of psoriasis treatments, better understand conditions that are related to psoriasis, and explore the history of the disease. You can also share your experience with researchers about what it means to live with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis by participating in Citizen Scientists. Answer questions and view your data along with 3,600 participants. Data is used to help researchers gain a better understanding of the disease. To learn more, you can participate and visit the website listed on the screen after tonight's presentation. We continue to improve health outcomes through our Patient Navigation Center, the world's first personalized support center for people impacted by psoriatic disease. The Foundation's Patient Navigation Center is available to help you find physicians, treatment information, navigate insurance issues, access support through our one-to-one program, and more. Contact us at 1-800-723-9166 or by visiting psoriasis.org/navigation center. To achieve the Foundation's goals as mentioned, please support our mission through donations or by participating in a local Team NPF event near you. The National Psoriasis Foundation identified a need for people with psoriatic arthritis to be aware and preventive measures that can be taken to limit joint destruction. Researchers have shown that diagnosis and ongoing treatment can reduce the permanent damage to joints. With this in mind, Be Joint Smart provides education opportunities that empower those who have psoriatic arthritis to learn more about their disease and treatment options. It also offers resources that provide support and encouragement when faced with a diagnosis of psoriatic arthritis. These goals continue today as part of the Foundation's Psoriatic Arthritis Project. So let's talk about what you can expect to learn today. In this presentation, you will learn about foods that promote overall health, how dietary changes play a role in inflammation, and with the holidays coming, we threw in some tips on how to make positive changes that will last. On behalf of the National Psoriasis Foundation, I'd like to recognize our sponsors, presenting sponsor Novartis and our national sponsors Celgene, AbbVie, Lilly, and Mallinckrodt for their efforts as part of this collaboration to provide an opportunity to learn more about psoriatic arthritis. Without their support, this educational program would not be possible. Thank you for your support. Now I'd like to introduce tonight's speaker, Paula Von Kuhn, registered dietitian, nutritionist, licensed dietitian, and certified diabetes educator. Paula spent 30 years as a dietitian with Legacy Health Systems in Portland, Oregon. The last several years she spent in ambulatory care, providing education to help people with chronic diseases improve their health through medical nutrition therapy. Her specialty areas focused on diabetes, cardiac care, and autoimmune diseases. She's a board member of the American Diabetes Association Portland affiliate. Recently retired, Paula enjoys spending time with family, including 3 grandchildren, traveling, gardening, and volunteering with local charities. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you, and welcome. I have no financial relationships to disclose. So today, my talk, I want to talk about eating to promote health rather than eating to promote disease. Most people don't consciously eat to promote disease, but their food choices may ultimately promote disease. What do I mean by that? Well, an example would be eating too much. Too many calories increases weight, which complicates many chronic conditions. Too much saturated fat compromises heart health. Too much processed food promotes inflammation. Additionally, poor nutritional choices affects our brain function and academics, our physical activity and performance, and our mental health and our stress. All are habits that promote disease over health. As I go through my presentation today, look at your habits and see what you are doing to promote health and what you can do to improve upon. Psoriatic disease and nutrition I want to talk about. I got several questions that you sent in ahead of time, and so through my presentation I've tried to address some of these questions. And we'll have the question and answer period at the end as well. Some people with psoriasis and or psoriatic arthritis feel changing what they eat can help improve symptoms of their disease. Psoriasis patients demonstrate a high interest in the role of diet in their skin condition. However, data are lacking to describe dietary interventions among psoriatic patients and their associated outcomes. Foods often talked about in relation to having either a positive or a negative effect on skin conditions includes alcohol, gluten, nightshades, fish oil and omega-3s, vegetables and vitamins. I'll talk about all of these in relation to a healthy diet. But probably the single most important thing you can do when it comes to diet and decreasing your symptoms of some of the symptoms of psoriasis is to try and achieve and then maintain a healthy weight. The number one thing I think you can do. So that should be a focus of your diet and eating to promote health. But unfortunately, there's no clear answer on some of the other controversies surrounding diet and psoriasis. What we do know, however, is that we all come from different backgrounds with different habits and different medical histories. So there's no one size fits all, if you will, for psoriasis and diet. We know we all respond differently to foods and respond at different times. We know that with psoriatic disease, you can have clearances or remissions that have absolutely nothing to do with what you change in your diet or your other treatments. And we also know that adding or eliminating one food may help one person, but may trigger problems in another person. So while it's good to share your experiences with other people, you have to take it all with a grain of salt and see if that will work for you, because no one treatment works for everyone. So again, keeping in mind the importance of a healthy weight, I do want to talk about specifics about foods that promote good health. A lot of this you've heard in the past, you've read about, you've made changes in your diets. So it's an ongoing process to really improve your health and eat the types of foods that are best for you and that can promote health. First of all, I want to talk about fruits and vegetables. it is important to have at least 4 or more cups of fruits and vegetables every day. Some people this is easy to do, some people it's a lifelong challenge. Fruits and vegetables should be the basis of your diet, and it doesn't matter if the fruits and vegetables are fresh or frozen or canned or dried. It doesn't matter if they're cooked or raw. The important thing is to eat fruits and vegetables. They're one of the least processed foods out there. You also want to eat healthy fats, unrefined fats like avocados and olive oil, olives, nuts and seeds. These are heart-healthy fats and also, again, less processed. Whole grains and dried beans are really important to promote health. Again, you've heard that probably numerous times, but I want to talk a little bit about whole grains. Some health organizations recommend that at least half of your grains or grain products should be whole grains. I recommend that in the home you try to eat even greater than 50% of your grains as whole grains, because when you're dining out in restaurants or picking up food with your busy lives, sometimes it's hard to eat whole grains in restaurants and food establishments. So at home, whole grains as much as possible. And by that I mean whole grain bread, whole grain cereals, whole grain side products, starches such as brown rice, whole grain pastas, and those types of things. What's the difference really between whole grain and multigrain when it comes to breads? A lot of times people think that a multigrain bread is healthier than a whole grain bread. But in fact, a multigrain bread can be made with multiple grains that are all refined grains. So we want the word whole grain. And what a whole grain is versus some of the more refined grains that we eat today is the whole grain is made up of 3 parts. The bran, which provides the fiber, the germ, which provides the vitamins and minerals, and then the endosperm, which is what really most of our fluffy white flours and our fluffy white rice is. They take off that good fiber and the vitamins and minerals, and we're just ending up with the fluffy white stuff. And they can do that with any grain. So a multi-grain bread is not necessarily as good as a whole grain bread. How do you know? How do you know if it's got whole grain in it or not without reading the ingredient list with a magnifying glass? Look at the fiber content on your breads and your cereals and compare which one has more fiber. Each serving of bread or cereal should have a minimum of 2 or 3 grams of fiber. If it doesn't have 2 or 3 grams of fiber, dietary fiber, in that, you'll see that on the nutrition label, it's not a whole grain. It doesn't have enough whole grain in it. So you think, well, what's only 2 or 3 grams? Well, in a day's time, it really does add up. So whole grains should have 2 to 3 grams of fiber per serving. Also, dried beans are important. They provide fiber. They provide lots of vitamins and minerals, as well as an excellent source of protein. Other things that promote good health are eggs from pasture-raised chickens, grass-fed meat, wild-caught fish. These are all things that promote good health. Sometimes a little more on the expensive end of our budget, so these may be changes that you slowly do over time. Then I want to talk about foods that you should avoid or really have in moderation. And in general, it's those processed foods. The processed foods really increase inflammation. So when we talk about processed foods, what are we talking about? Well, here it says meats and snacks. And by meat, processed meats, it's not just bologna and hot dogs, but it's some of those other packaged meats you see in the grocery store that have a lot of additives, preservatives, and salt added. It's really best to get fresh or frozen meats that haven't been processed and cook them yourself. Other processed foods that increase inflammation would be those white grain products that I just spoke about. Foods with artificial sweeteners, foods with large ingredient lists, processed and added all kinds of additives and preservatives. And those tend to be the foods with the long shelf life. Foods with long shelf life have a lot of additives, a lot of preservatives added to those. Trans fats, our bodies turn into saturated fat and cholesterol. So by eating a trans fat, even if it's a vegetable product, that trans fat can lead to increased heart conditions. Refined sugars are processed, and when I say refined sugars, there's more than just white sugar that is considered a refined sugar. Brown sugar is refined. Even some of the other alternative sweeteners or sugars that people use, such as molasses and honey, and some of those agave, those are all processed as well, so, and considered refined sugars. Alcohol is a food to have in moderation, and it has been shown in many people reportedly to increase psoriasis symptoms. Sodas, artificially sweetened drinks, drinks with high fructose corn syrup, all are highly processed and should be limited. And that also goes for a lot of the processed fruit drinks out there. I feel it's better to eat a whole fruit and a glass of water than to have a fruit juice. So it's better to eat the whole fruit and not the juice from it. Now, when I look at foods, both these foods to have in moderation and these foods that promote good health that I talked about earlier, you can't just say, eat only this and never eat this. So I like to look at foods as something that has, how many strikes does it have against it, I always say about a food. There's certain foods that might only have one strike against it, but then it's got lots of good things about it. So it might have lots of fiber and nutrients in it, but it might have one negative thing about it. I like to look at foods that have lots of strikes against it, such as these, here we are, foods to have in moderation. Many of these have many strikes. For instance, they're processed, that's one strike. They might be low in fiber, that's another strike. They might be high in calories, that's another strike. So 3 strikes and they're out is kind of what I say. If it only has one strike, might not be so bad. You can still win the game with one strike, but with 3 strikes, you're out. So keep that in mind when making food choices. It's always not a yes or no when it comes to foods. It's a, what's good about this and what's maybe not so good about this. So in talking about that, I want to move on to talking about the nightshade vegetables, whether to eat them or not. Because some people believe that nightshade vegetables trigger flares. Unfortunately, there's limited evidence on this. Some people find that it relieves symptoms, other people don't. But when you look at the nightshade vegetables and what they are, potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant, those foods have many good things with them. They've got lots of vitamins and minerals and fibers, so they're highly nutritious, and some of them even have some, quite a few antioxidants with them. So they're not all bad. When it comes to fruits and vegetables, the important thing is that there's so many out there. You don't have to like them all. You don't have to eat them all. But if you eat a variety of fruits and vegetables, you'll get a variety of nutrients in your diet. So don't say, I'm never going to eat these foods, because many of these foods are on the Mediterranean diet, are on an antioxidant diet, but they give you good nutrition. So there's limited evidence. You don't want to eat them exclusively or eat them 3 times a day, but I do think they are an important part of a healthy diet. Now, what about gluten sensitivity? Many people find that gluten affects their psoriasis, and in fact, 1 out of 4 people with psoriasis may be sensitive to gluten, or they may have celiac disease and intolerance to gluten. So I do need to talk about that. What is gluten? It's a protein that's found in certain grains, wheat, rye, barley, and triticale to be specific. But also byproducts of these 4 grains are found in many foods. And another reason to avoid processed foods, because there's a lot of these byproducts that are in processed foods, even though you don't eat specifically one of these 4 grains. So when you're eating a gluten-free diet or a low-gluten diet, the things that you can eat are whole fruits and vegetables, meats and poultry, fish and seafood, dairy products, eggs, legumes. Some of these foods that I've just recently been talking about, the heart-healthy nuts and seeds, that kind of thing. Again, the less processed foods tend to be lower in gluten. How to know whether you're gluten intolerant or gluten sensitive or not, especially if you suspect that you have celiac disease. It's important to have your doctor check you for a sensitivity to that. There's blood tests and biopsies they can do to see, but I just want to warn you that if you think you're intolerant to gluten and you go on a gluten-free diet, after a month of gluten-free, and then you go into the doctor and say, you know, I feel better now that I'm on a gluten-free diet. Will you test me for celiac disease or the antibodies to gluten? Well, if you've been on a gluten-free diet for a few weeks, you'll show a false negative on that blood test. So it's not necessarily conclusive to have the blood test for gluten antibodies when you're not eating gluten. So what are some things we should add to our diet? Rather than just taking everything away, what can we add? So supplements, nutritional supplements. Fish oil with the richness of omega-3 fatty acids is helpful. Many people find that it relieves joint pain and that morning stiffness. So you might consider omega-3 fatty acids. We do recommend fish a couple times a week, but if you absolutely can't eat any fish, then the fish oil supplements or the omega-3 fatty acid supplements are important. Vitamin D not only contributes to strong bones and healthy joints, but vitamin D is found to affect many chronic conditions. So you want to make sure that your vitamin D is up to the level that it should be. And the only way to know for sure is through a blood test. And then if you're lacking in that, you can take 1,000 to 4,000 milligrams or international units of vitamin D daily. Probiotics, that good bacteria, not only improves the immune function, but it also is helpful for good gut health. You want your gut to be working right, and the probiotics help with that. Those are foods, and you can get probiotic supplements, but the foods would be anything with live bacteria in it, such as yogurts, kimchi, kombucha, those kinds of things. An anti-inflammatory diet. I've talked about some of these things, but more specifically here on this slide, it tells you specifics if you want to refer to this again later. Again, those fish, eating fish a couple times a week is really important in an anti-inflammatory diet. Maybe tuna fish sandwiches, if you're taking your lunch to work or to school, would be a good way to increase fish. Fish for dinner once a week. Going out to have fish is good for people who don't know how to cook fish or don't like cooking fish in their house. But try to increase the fish as much as you can. Twice a week at a minimum. More often would be even better. Fruits and vegetables, I've pretty much talked about that. A variety of fruits and vegetables, several portions a day. Nuts and seeds, while they're heart healthy, they are anti-inflammatory, they are also high in calories. So only 1.5 ounces daily is kind of what you should be focusing on, and that's only a couple of tablespoons. It's easy to increase your calories by overdoing on nuts. Olive oil is probably the best oil to use for an anti-inflammatory diet. Some of the other monounsaturated oils are a little too rich in those omega-6s instead of the omega-3s, so stick with the olive oil. Beans, it says here at least 1 cup twice a week. That's 2 cups of beans a week. That's a can of beans per week. A lot of people don't tolerate beans well, and they go, a cup of beans, I couldn't eat that many at one time. And you don't have to eat them at one time, but just think of how you can increase in your diet or substitute 1 can of beans a week. It might be that you just, on your salad at dinner time, sprinkle a couple tablespoons of kidney beans or garbanzo beans from that can. Maybe you'll open the can at the beginning of the week and do that. Add some every day to your salad, add some to your soups. Another way, beans that you can add would be hummus. Hummus is made with beans, and if you use that to instead of a high-fat dip with your vegetables, it's a very healthy way to increase your beans. Whole grains are good. Onions also are anti-inflammatory. Again, cooked or raw, doesn't matter. This is another way of looking at the anti-inflammatory diet. Pretty much reviews down at the bottom everything I've said. Again, with a pyramid, the foods at the bottom are what you want to base your diet on, and as you go up a pyramid, it's smaller and smaller amounts. So I pretty much talked about everything at the bottom of this. What I want to talk about here is the importance of healthy herbs and spices. Garlic, ginger, turmeric, cinnamon, some of those herbs have been used for centuries for healthy eating in many cultures. But I think as we try to eat healthy, cook at home, eat less salt, herbs and spices are an excellent way to add flavor to your diet as well as healthy foods. Tea, again, rich in anti-inflammatory and rich in antioxidants, also fluid. It's a good fluid. Nutritional supplements, the ones I talked about are good, but also I think just a regular multiple vitamin with mineral supplement, daily multiple vitamin, is a good insurance tablet against any nutritional deficiencies. Red wine is known to be anti-inflammatory. We do want to watch the amount of that because of the alcohol content, but it does have an anti-inflammatory effect, as does dark chocolate. You want the dark chocolates, again, small amounts. That's the very tip of our pyramid, so it should be just small amounts. It would be considered a healthy sweet. So when you do have sweets, a healthy sweet such as a dark chocolate is low in sugar compared to some of our other dessert choices. The Mediterranean diet, again, crossover with what I've been talking about in a healthy diet and an anti-inflammatory diet, in that Mediterranean diet is rich in fruits and vegetables, nuts and beans and seeds, whole grains, with moderate amounts of land animals, whether it's poultry, beef, pork, whatever. Less amounts of land animal and more emphasis on the seafood. Offers balanced, healthy choices that help reduce risk for other conditions as well, the heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure. And if you focus on the fruits and vegetables over a lot of grains, then it will help with weight management as well. So again, another way of looking at those same recommendations in a pyramid format. This one has grains at the bottom versus the fruits and vegetables at the bottom. And so this is dependent on your weight goal. If you need to lose weight or have difficulty managing your weight, you would want to put fruits and vegetables down at the bottom and switch places with the grain. If you're someone who needs to increase your weight or has a hard time maintaining enough weight, then you would put more focus on these whole grains. So, I'm going to take a sip of water here. Mind your P's and Q's. And what they mean by P's and Q's are your portion size and the quality of the food choices. So when we say watch your portion size, whether it's a healthy food or an unhealthy food, if you eat too much of anything, it can be too many calories and affect your weight. So watch the portions. And the quality, pretty much we've talked a lot about that up to this point. So I'll just skip over that and talk a little bit more about those portions. The plate method, I think, is one of the best things you can look at in trying to manage your weight while managing your portions, where they suggest a quarter of the plate be a protein that's about the size of your palm. The palm of your hand should be about a quarter of the plate, and then another palm or a quarter of the plate be the starch portion, and then 2 palms worth of vegetables. Whether it's all one vegetable or whether you have a tossed salad and a steamed vegetable, half of your plate should be vegetables. Okay, you want more? Want more rice on this? Well, if you eat another palmful of rice, you have to eat another palmful of vegetables. So when you increase your portion of meat or starch, you have to increase your portion of vegetables. Try to keep that in mind, and it will be real helpful in managing your weight. It doesn't have to be served like this either. It can be served with all mixed together. You know, your pasta sauce, let's say, if you are having spaghetti, make sure that you have lots of vegetables in that, lots of onions, mushrooms, tomatoes, zucchini. I mean, some people put zucchini, carrots, all those kinds of vegetables in their pasta sauce, and then spice it up with lots of herbs. Because as we're trying to manage our weight, just keep in mind that every pound of weight adds 3 times the amount of pressure on your joints. So let's switch bases here a little bit and talk about emotional eating versus mindful eating. You can have the best plan in mind, but sometimes there are other things that affect our food choices, not only of what we choose, but of how much we choose. And that's our emotional eating versus mindful eating issue. Sometimes we turn to food for comfort, stress relief, or as a reward, rather than to satisfy hunger. Most emotional eaters feel powerless over their food cravings and have to eat to feel better. Excuse me. Emotional eating comes on suddenly. You crave fatty foods or sugar foods, pizza, ice cream, chocolate, something like that. And the emotional food isn't satisfied once you feel full. You want more and more. Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat. Excuse me. Mindful eating, on the other hand, is the practice of eating Mindful eating is the practice of developing awareness of your eating habits and allows you to stop and think, do I really need this food? It helps you recognize triggers, and you can change your action. Physical hunger comes on gradually, and almost anything will relieve that hunger. Doesn't have to be a specific food, such as a fatty food or a sugar food. So here's a look at the cycle of emotional eating. Stress, depression, feeling bored, upset, angry, lonely, or tired. You turn to food. You reach for your favorite comfort food. You feel guilty for not having more willpower, especially when you see the scale. Seeing the scale sometimes leads to more food and more depression. Eventually, you can develop chronic health issues, which in turn makes you feel even more depressed. Emotional eating can lead to regret, guilt, or shame. When you are physically hungry, you don't feel like this, since you are giving your body what it needs. If you're in this cycle and you feel your health is being impacted by your choices, try to take small steps to counter your emotional eating triggers. So the first step is really identifying your triggers. Find other ways to feed your feelings. You may need to talk to somebody or find professional help to help you work through these issues. If you're bored, find other activities you enjoy doing. Because in general, once you've done the emotional eating for these feelings, you still have the same feelings. You want to pause before eating. Take a few minutes to think about what you're going to eat and why, or choose foods that are healthier. Being more mindful of what you eat can break this cycle to improve your overall health. But the important thing with changing your eating is trying to make changes that will last, because it's difficult to make changes to your eating and your eating habits. The first thing you want to do is make a plan and write it down. After my talk today, you might spend a few minutes writing down some of the things that I talked about today that you think that you can do. Some of them you're already done. You've already achieved some of these things. But what do you want to work on? There may be several things you want to work on, but I think it's really important to start small. If you write down a list of things that you need to do, and it's several items long, you can't do it all at once. You can't do it overnight. So start small. Start with just one behavior at a time, and repeat that same good behavior several days or several times before you move on to making another change. I've had many people tell me that they throw everything out of their refrigerator and go and stock it with fresh fruits and vegetables because they're going to start eating more fruits and vegetables. But then 2 weeks later, they come back and tell me they threw it all away because it's spoiled in the refrigerator. So you really have to try to do just one thing at a time. Maybe trying to, instead of saying, I'm just going to only eat vegetables or whatever, say, I'm going to eat carrots instead of potato chips. Something like that, something really specific. So when we're making changes, you want to look at the guidelines up at the top there about SMART goals. It has to be specific and measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. You can't say, I'm going to lose weight. That's not very specific. It has to be measurable and timely. You can't say, I'm going to lose 20 pounds by Christmas. That's not very timely. But what can you do? Can you try to lose a pound a month in the next 6 months? Well, you'd like to lose more than that, perhaps, but let's just start small. Maybe you can lose 2 pounds a month, but if you attain 1 pound a month, in 6 months, you're 6 pounds lighter. So it's better to be 6 pounds lighter than 6 pounds heavier. So 6 pounds is nothing to sneeze at. And remember that slide, the earlier slide that said for every pound, it increases that pressure on your joints threefold. You might want to involve a buddy or ask for professional support. With the holidays, I do want to talk about healthy eating, and you don't want to say, okay, she had a good talk or an okay talk today. I'm going to wait until January 1st with my New Year's resolutions to make any of those changes. I think it's important to start changes, the small changes, as soon as you can. And when people wait for the holidays to be over, they're never over. You know, we celebrate holidays from pre-Halloween, past, you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas, into Valentine's Day and Easter. So in the media, there's all, and the grocery stores, there's always things to tempt us. So let's start today. Here's just a few tips that may or may not work for you. One or two of them might work for you on how to improve your nutrition or make healthier choices during this time of year, whether you're hosting an event or whether you're going to another event. Trim it back a little bit. Remember, it's the holidays, and remember as they say, the reason for the season. It's not necessarily to eat. There are other reasons for each of the other holidays that we can embrace and enjoy. Sometimes when you're going to a party, it's better to wear snug clothes so that you feel the effects of overeating much more quickly. Or keep one hand busy so that you have a hard time eating some of those foods. Some people will chew gum so they're not nibbling. Be a food snob or other, that, as well as, what's the other one? Oh, check it out. Number 4 and 6 I kind of put together. Check it out. What I like to do at a buffet is kind of walk around the buffet table and see what the offerings are before I start filling my plate up, so that I can make choices based on the foods I like or the foods that maybe I don't get to eat very often. Don't skip the meal prior to going out. You don't want to go to a function hungry, because you will tend to want to eat more. And at those functions, maybe try to add more fun and games or activities or conversation so that you're less apt to eat. You have to remember the reason for the going to this affair. Is it to eat or is it to socialize? Alternate alcohol with non-alcoholic beverages, or, you know, if you have a glass of wine, you don't want to keep filling up that wine glass without having some water in there. If they're fried appetizers, probably would be best to skip the fried appetizers, more in favor of salads or brothy soups. And again, maybe you need to limit the variety of the foods you choose. So this kind of wraps up my talk for today. Here's some nutrition resources that can help you with weight loss as well as healthy food choices. I've used many of these and found patients to really enjoy a lot of these. So look them up if you're so inclined and see if any of these can benefit you or your support system in trying to make healthy food choices. Other resources that can help with nutrition are listed here. I want to point out these are all either .org or .edu, and these are institutions that have more factual information than some of the .com or commercial websites out there. So please look at these or any of the others out there. So now we'll open it up to some questions and answers, but I want to thank you for tuning in today, and hope that this has helped you make some healthy food choices.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us. We will dive now into the Q&A portion of the webcast. You can submit your questions using the questions panel on your attendee interface, and we'll attempt to answer as many as possible in the remaining time. First question here, is honey beneficial for psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis?
Is honey beneficial for psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis? As I mentioned, sometimes honey can be just as refined as white table sugar. So honey itself is not all that natural in many forms, or many times. You can, however, find natural honey, and that would be an alternative sweetener, keeping in mind it is a sugar and should be used sparingly. There is some information on the internet about a rare type of honey found in Australia that is used as an antibiotic, as a topical application for some skin conditions. They put the honey on the skin like a lotion or a cream. So, there is evidence that that may be helpful, but like I say, it's a rare type of honey that I'm not even sure if it's available in this country. And it's, again, topical and not used. The eating of it doesn't help the skin condition. So.
Great, thank you. And next question here, what do you think about aloe drinks?
So aloe drinks from the aloe vera plant. Aloe has been shown to be beneficial, again, topically on skin conditions. Many people find relief from that. Ingesting aloe vera juice is an anti-inflammatory. So when we talk about those anti-inflammatory foods, aloe juice would be one of those options.
Great. Next question here. Do you think that I need to eat organic?
Good question. Organic foods are quite expensive. It is important to make your choices wisely when it comes to organic foods. First of all, if you buy organic foods, make sure, especially the processed ones, which we find in the frozen food section, make sure they're from this country. There's many organic frozen and processed foods that come from other countries, specifically China. And I have to say that they don't have to follow the USDA guidelines on what is considered organic. So if it's a processed food and it's made out of the country, I would not feel that it is necessarily an organic food. The other thing about local organic foods, again, they're expensive too, whether they're imported or not. There is a website that you can go to that lists the 12 worst fruits and vegetables as far as retaining the residue of pesticides and such. It's called the Dirty Dozen. There's 12 foods specifically that are the worst out there. You want to go to the website, just Google Dirty Dozen and find out what those are. And those you should definitely eat organic. Let me see if I can think of some of those. I can't think of all 12 of them, but it's our greens, our lettuce greens, strawberries, apples, celery, potatoes, peppers, I think. So those are a few of them that are the Dirty Dozen, and it's worth your while to spend the extra money to buy organic on those Dirty Dozen. Also on that website, it talks about the Clean 15, the 15 healthiest foods that, even though they may be processed with pesticides and such, they are easily cleaned so that there is no residue on those, so you wouldn't want to necessarily, or you wouldn't need to spend your food budget on getting those organic. So that in itself, I think, is reason to consider some organic foods, but not across the board. Organic foods aren't necessarily healthier. They just they don't have the residue from pesticides and such. So the nutritional content of an organic food or a non-organic food, they're anti-inflammatory products, they're antioxidant process are all similar, whether it's organic or not. It's those residues of pesticides and antibiotics and such.
Great, thanks. Another question here. Does taking supplements bring the same effect as getting vitamins and minerals in food?
I believe that taking supplements, vitamin and mineral supplements, They've been formulated to be just as healthy, and our body doesn't know whether it came from a vitamin tablet or our food products. But having said that, it's also important to eat healthy because we haven't necessarily discovered all the vitamins and minerals and healthy food products or healthy food that we need to consume. For instance, there's the antioxidant properties of some of the micronutrients in fruits and vegetables are not in a capsule, just the few vitamins that have been identified. So I think vitamin tablets are good, but eating a healthy diet is with variety is really important as well.
Great. We have time for one more question here. Are there specific types of fish you would recommend?
They do recommend the cold water fish, the oily fishes, as having more omega-3 fatty acids in them. Things like salmon. Here in the Northwest, we eat a lot of salmon. I think that's a healthy one. But really, truly, all seafood is heart healthy. And again, the oilier, the more anti-inflammatory products it has. But some people just don't like mackerel and some of those other fish out there. So I think eating fish is important, and again, the variety. When I talk about foods, I think it's important to get variety in no matter what food group we're looking at.
Great, perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. If you have any other questions or have a question that was not answered, please contact our Patient Navigation Center by phone, email, live chat, or Skype. And once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation. We'd appreciate if you can complete that and provide your feedback. Thank you again to our sponsors, presenting sponsor Novartis, and our national sponsors Celgene, AbbVie, Lilly, and Mallinckrodt. And thank you to Paula Vokun and all of you for attending. And finally, I just wanted to mention that a recording of tonight's webcast will be available shortly on our website, and you can access our complete webcast archive by visiting psoriasis.org/webcast. Additionally, you can watch the recordings of our previous webinars in this series featuring Dr. Ronald Presick, Dr. Evan Siegel, and Dr. Brian Levin. Thank you, everyone, and we hope you have a lovely evening.